What attracted me to be a part of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill here at ICT, the love of the subject, Billie Holiday. An extraordinary career, an extraordinary life, one of great dimension, and I was deeply, deeply attracted to that life and that career, and greatly impacted by her music all of my life. So it became a very easy yes for me when I was asked to be the director. It became a very, very immediate and easy yes. Performing here at the Beverly O'Neill Theater with Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill is very unique because of its intimacy. It is so intimate, and for this particular kind of work, we're playing this as a two-hander. There's a piano player, the character is Jimmy Powers, and then of course we have Billie Holiday, Lady Day. So there are two characters, and the intimacy of this work, the honesty in this work, has an opportunity to immediately impact an audience because of the beautiful intimacy of the space. Billie Holiday is at this bar and grill, Emerson's Bar and Grill in South Philadelphia, because this was the last 4 months of her life. This is the third week of March 1959. She dies in July of 1959. Unfortunately, the career that had played the great houses of the world, frankly. She was an international star, but she was playing this club, and it was a club that was familiar to her. But at this time, the audience was very, very small. But there was something about the historical familiarity of playing this small house that she had a perennial kind of opportunity to come back and play. And she always loved the intimate houses. And so that's what we're dealing with regarding Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. Well, it's written as a play and a concert. It's been called a musical, but it really, for me, as the director, it's a play with music. She does concertize, if you will, within the parameters of the play, but there are an extraordinary number of monologues. There are elements of dialogue, but they're huge monologues where she talks about her life. She talks about the journey of her family, the journey of experiences on the road. She talks about her relationships, and so it really is a tremendous play with music and a lot of wonderful, wonderful, insightful monologues. Is there more pressure for someone playing a legend like Billie Holiday? No, I don't know that there's more pressure. The reality of it is that you always want to go into this work honoring the subject. You can improve upon what they did. We're not into mimicry. This is not an impression. This is an extraordinary actress attempting to access the essence of this great lady. And that's what our goal was, frankly, in the rehearsal process, in the early conversations, was to make sure that we honored this life because it was a life worthy of honor 60 years after her death, as a matter of fact. Well, the musical director / pianist, Jimmy Powers, is being played by Stephan. He's not only the musical director for the show, but he's the pianist, and he plays the character of Jimmy Powers, the pianist to Billie Holiday. Stephan is just a magnificent artist. He is a person who came out of jazz himself in his studies. He has worked deeply, deeply in the church. He works very closely with the Amazing Grace Conservatory, where he teaches voice. And so everything that he does has come to bear in the role of Jimmy Powers, and we're thrilled to have him without question. Billie Holiday is played by the inimitable Karole Foreman. I'm telling you, I have known Karole for close to 30 years. We did a reading together as actors many years ago, but we've never had an opportunity to work together. And it is an absolutely sublime experience to come to rehearsal each day, to watch this consummate artist do her work. I'm just honored and so proud to have my name associated as director with her name, because the performance that she gives, and the day-to-day, more than the performative element of what she gives each night, it's what we experience each day that has brought me such joy. The spirit of Billie Holiday is a triumphant spirit. The life, the person herself endured many greatly concussively impactful events in her life, but she was able to take all of these difficult moments and the moments of joy and put them right into her music. She was a consummate artist that way. She took what happened in her life and she placed it in the music. And so there are nights when the blues allegedly is a downer to some, but her blues often had such a joyful kind of spirit in it. Her phrasing was impeccable. Her sense of timing was impeccable. She loved to really bother the tempo of things because it was depending on how she felt that evening, how she was feeling the musicians, what the atmospheric conditions were that night, whether the air condition was on or off. She used all of those things that were immediately around her in her art. And when we talk about the great artist of the world, she's in the pantheon of those because she was able to do that, and she was an international star, dying at age 44, but being talked about and being portrayed 60 years after her death. The relationship musically between the pianist here in our show and Billie Holiday is a relationship that it means everything. There's a shorthand, there's a familiarity, there is a soft landing, knowing that there is a sense of safety because this man knows the artist, he knows the person, and he knows the music. And that's what's so important. It's not just about playing dots. It's really, really about knowing this person you're playing for, particularly for a singer. There has to be a great sensitivity in the one doing the accompanying. So this relationship is deeply investigated by having two persons on stage. Oftentimes a trio is on stage, certain times there's a duo, but we really, really desire to have the piano player and Lady Day have a very, very close, immediate relationship to examine this particular work. What do I want the audience to get out of this production? That's always a very, very difficult question, but I certainly want them to come with an open mind, an open heart, and an open spirit, because we can be touched when we're open that way. Vulnerability is about access. It's not about weakness. And so I'm hopeful that an audience can come in here with a kind of openness and a vulnerability that they then allow themselves to take this journey that we're presenting each night for about 92 minutes and go into the lobby, then go out into their cars and somehow ponder what they've experienced in such a way that perhaps they can then promote some intentional civility to someone they encounter immediately following the performance. The Southern California community should come and see Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill because it is an examination of an extraordinary life, an extraordinary artist with two persons on stage who are absolutely brilliant. We're here at the International City Theater here in Long Beach, California, and I would suggest that you run and not walk to see the work that these two artists are doing on this stage.
Well, what attracted me to this project was Billie Holiday. I mean, she's an extraordinary American artist, one of the greatest artists that we've had of the last century and still is. Her life has been a mixture of a lot of myth, maybe a lot of misinformation, and I think as we re-examine her life, particularly today in the wake of the opioid and drug crises that we've had forever, it seems, in this country, and the criminalization of it, how we might have viewed her life through different eyes, knowing what we know about addiction these days. And I think we would have had more compassion. Can you imagine if she hadn't been criminalized and if she actually received the help that she had, what might her life have been had been? But in spite of all that, how her spirit, how her artistry transcended so much in her life, and she still had the ability to share her gift with us. And so I wanted personally a deeper investigation of a little bit of her journey. She's at Emerson's Bar and Grill. Her closest friend, Lester Young, just a few months earlier had passed away. And it was devastating to her. You know, at this point, she's lost her mother already. She's at a point in her career where, you know, a lot of people are not coming out the way they used to. The biggest thing was her cabaret card had been taken from her after she had been convicted of a felony and sent to prison in West Virginia. And she didn't know this until she got out, so she could sing in big venues like Carnegie Hall and do concerts all over the world, but she was not allowed to perform in the intimate clubs in New York City, which was her home and where she most wanted to be. So in this story that's being presented tonight, it's based on the author's, I believe a companion or a friend of the author saw her in one of her last performances shortly before she passed away in the small club, and there were only about 7 to 12 people in attendance. So this story that we're presenting is based on that event. I play Billie Holiday. The story takes place on an evening in March in Philadelphia at a little bar called Emerson's Bar and Grill, where in its heyday Billie performed to usually packed houses. In the story that we're presenting at ICT, this is one of the last performances of her life. She's 44 years of age. About 4 months from the date we're performing, Billie Holiday will be dead. So this is a point in her life where she is really fighting for her life, quite literally. The addiction, she does die of kidney failure, and other complications from long years of drug abuse. But she still wants to sing. In the play, there are lines the author has written, "Singing is living to me." And it really was. It was her salvation. It was her way out. To me, when I hear Billie sing, it sounds someone's whose soul is just trying to transcend the physical limitations and pain and suffering of their own body, of their own physical existence. And in a way, it is so life-affirming to me, her voice. So that's the journey we're taking. And it's also a very intimate experience. I'm talking to audience members. That's why they've moved the stage out, and they've put tables basically in the staging and playing area, because to her, she, her public were her friends. She was a woman that loved to be loved and needed to be loved. So it's about conveying what's happening in her life in that moment and what she's trying to do. That's the story of the night. It's usually, I think, been treated as a musical, but it does, as Wren and I were discussing his particular vision for the piece, and it is a very intimate thing, and usually it can be done with a combo and very grand and very concert-esque. But what I loved about Wren's vision of the piece and his intuition was the intimacy of getting to more the feeling of one-on-one, that you're sitting down and you're actually having a conversation with Billie, and she's singing to you and with you, and it's bringing back these memories, and it's making you think of other things. So I really like that stripped away. It's just myself and my music director, Stephan, who's wonderful, who plays Jimmy Powers, who's her companion at this time in her life. She's estranged from her husband. She's lost many people in her life that she has been closest to. And so he's her support system at this moment. So it feels more like a play with music, because she is a singer, so it's absolutely appropriate to tell the story of Billie Holiday's life. Pressure. You mean to live up to people's expectations? Sure, that could be it if I were focused on that. And initially when I got the part, and, of course, seeing Audra McDonald perform and another dear friend of mine, Deidre Henry, who's performed it. I mean, they're both extraordinary artists and that I admire. But at the end of the day, it's Billie's story that's most important. And for me, it's how can I best be of service to honoring her story, because she's the star of the show, not me. Billie is the story that people have come to see and hear, and that's what they expect. So that my job is to give the most truthful representation that I can of and to honor and respect her history and legacy, and maybe hopefully dig for something that we didn't know about her, and to find compassion and empathy and hope even in her story. Some songs she didn't receive royalties for. She was paid maybe $75 for the session. And then I was reading her autobiography, and one friend said, Billie, you should be making a fortune off of, I can't remember if it was Lover Man or another song that she had written. I just paid $10 for your album. And she was only paid $75 for the recording. So if you think of the thousands, the hundreds of thousands, the millions of people who've bought, she should have been a millionaire how many times over. And, probably had 70 cents in her bank account, or $7, something like that. And she had a roll of money rolled up in her thigh in the hospital bed that was given to a friend of hers when she passed, about $750 from an article that she had sold to a magazine so she could have money because she didn't have any money. The process of becoming Billie Holiday has been an extensive one. I've worked with 2 vocal coaches, one for music, Michael Scott Harris, who's been my vocal coach and helping me find placement and support and of finding her sound musically. And I also work with a wonderful dialect coach by the name of Denise Woods, and I met her when I was on the set of True Detective, and she's Mahershala Ali's personal dialect coach, and she also did the coaching for the Harriet Tubman film. So there were resources that she was able to use. Finding Billie's particular sound, she grew up in Philly, is her birthplace. And so there were things that were going on in the 1900s, the flu epidemic. There was also, her people came from, at least her daddy's mother, who lived with Billie when Billie was a child, was a slave from a plantation in Virginia. So there was a particular sound of the African slaves that were taken to Virginia, so the dialect coach gave me some videos of regional dialects. And it's interesting because all the vocal placement of those slaves is exactly the same where Billie's voice is pitched, which is right in the nasal cavity of the mask. And so these Africans have this very particular sound. And also being from the South. But then there's some parts of it that sound like they're from Jersey, Maryland, Baltimore. Then she did living most of her life in Baltimore, Maryland, and then New York. And so it's this mixture of this area that's really interesting and challenging to find. But I think we found a happy balance because the intention wasn't to do an imitation of her, but people are coming to no one else sounds like Billie Holiday, so that has to be acknowledged. And so that's been a big part of the work. Also the research, watching documentaries, reading books, reading as much as I can about her. And thank God for YouTube, because there's a lot that's documented, fortunately, that we have preserved of her life and her music and her legacy. The spirit and her and the optimism of Billie Holiday, and also her humor. She was a funny lady. I mean, she laughed even at tragic events in her own life. I mean, and it's interesting. A lot of people said our perception of her is, this victim, this person who is certainly, absolutely a victim of racism, of poverty, of being sexually assaulted at 10 years of age, being taken advantage of by men, of managers, of business people, certainly the injustice of the legal system, being imprisoned on narcotics when she really needed help. But I don't think she ever saw herself as a victim. If anything, she said she was a strong woman. If she needed to fight you, she would fight. And she fought as much as she could, as best as she knew how, not having anything past an 8th grade education, not knowing the legal system, always wanting and thinking the best of people, not refusing representation and lawyers. And she would take the fall for drugs when really it was her companions that brought it in. And they had lawyers and they were gone and nowhere to be seen. So, I think she was a really extraordinary, formidable woman. When you think about what happened in her life, my question was, well, how could she not turn to chemical substances or something at some point to deal with the amount of pain and trauma that she was surviving? But, if she had, as I said before, if therapy or help or some type of medical treatment. She was astonished by the help that addicts got in Europe, and she was tempted to stay in Europe. And, that might have been best for her personally and maybe her career. We'll never know. But I even in the way that she tells the stories, and I think the playwright really does capture that extraordinarily well, her sense of humor. And there's a sense of also this cavalier attitude. I think she did everything she wanted to do in her life. Stephan, so the other actor in the show with me is the extraordinary Stephan Terry, who's my music director. He's also my accompanist, Billie's accompanist on stage. And he also plays Jimmy Powers, who is in this show, Billie Holiday's companion at this stage in her life. And it's interesting that the playwright gave Jimmy Powers the same name as her first husband, Jimmy Sonny Monroe. We call him Sonny in the show. And sometimes during the show, by accident, she forgets and thinks it's her first husband, Sonny. And he's got this wonderful quiet strength and just a wonderful groundedness that I think plays so well in the intimacy and the tone of the show. And we also get to hear him sing. And, you know, I keep saying we need to give this brother a show because he's got an amazing voice, and the feel and the spirit of his playing is just, it's just such a pleasure to sing and perform and be on stage and share the stage and this give and take. It's wonderful. Well, the relationship between the singer and the pianist is inseparable. It's as much a part of the storytelling as the dialogue and the words. It's really where Billie lives her best life. She says it is living to her. So it's such an intricate part of this storytelling. You know, this was her gift to us, and also coming down to just having a pianist and someone who's as talented as Stephan Terry, and also Wren is this walking receptacle of music history. Even the style of playing and the way that there was a dialogue between the pianist and Billie. Listening to some recordings of Billie Holiday, she had this wonderful way of singing in the shorthand with her musician, where she and the musicians she's singing in between the solos, especially the way that she and, for example, Lester Young, the tenor saxophone player, it was like the same voice, you know, this breathing together, this heartbeat of music, if you will. It's a whole other energy and entity of itself, of its own, that you're co-creating with someone. So and that's wonderful, especially having the time to work with someone over a period of time. You know, you begin to speak each other's language, and that's what's so much fun. So in this production, Wren and I had a lot of conversations because I performed in this theater before. I did Fences here, and, you know, there's a platform, you know, the stage is above, and there's more distance between us as the actors and the audience, but we're in a bar. And she's speaking directly to the audience. And I said, you know, Wren, are we going to move the stage out into? And he said, yeah, you know, absolutely. So as you'll see, they've taken down the platform. It's just about the stage area, as in a lot of these little joint jazz clubs, it's only about 8 inches off the ground, no more than a foot. And they've opened up the moat in front of the theater, and we've moved tables down there. So I think there's like 4 tables so we've got room for 8 people. And it's great because then I get to come out and immediately, you know, I have eye contact with people and I'm getting responses from them. And it's right for this particular production, you know, because she talks about singing to her friends like she was in her living room or in her own home, and loving the intimacy of that, and also I'm able to come out into the audience to, you know, a certain extent. I think the lights will only go so far. So because I felt for this particular, the way we were telling this story in particular, it was really important to have that type of intimacy. And to me, the audience is the third character in our production. What I would love for the audience to come away with from our production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill is just really a reaffirmation of this great artist that we were so blessed to have on this planet with us for the period of time, for her too brief 44 years, and to really see a triumphant human being Yes, she was a black woman. Yes, she was a woman who was addicted to drugs. Yes, she was a woman with an extraordinary voice. But she was a woman of such spirit and determination, and to look at her with empathy, and maybe to get us to look differently at what is happening to other human beings like her, like me, like each other. I think it's important for us to share all of our stories, to let us know that we're all in this together. It's not just the other just because someone is different from you. We're born looking different. We come in with different skills and talents, and not, but just to see an example of what's possible, when we connect with other human beings. And I think theater is a great way, as a great affirmation of our humanity, and for so many different people to gather together in a live space to witness someone else's journey, tragic or hopeful or sad or joyous or profound. It's a great affirmation of that, we're all in this together, and to pay tribute to her and to celebrate her, and just to be grateful that we had an artist like Billie Holiday. Why should Southern California communities come out and see Billie Holiday at ICT? She's one of the greatest artists we've had of the 20th century. We're in the 21st century now. She's timeless. There was so much that I didn't know about her before doing this production. And my dad was a big jazz guy, so I listened to her growing up. It's an exquisite production. It's a wonderful evening of theater. It's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate this woman, to revisit, relive her music. It's timeless. It's transcendent, and you're just going to have a wonderful experience out on the town. And if you don't go out too often, I know theater is a big deal to get out, get in your car, drive, pay for parking, get dinner if you're hungry, and sit down for 90 minutes. But I know that you will be absolutely thrilled and glad you did.
The reason I wanted to be part of this production, well, first of all, Wren Brown called me, and I'm an admirer of his work, and I've known him for some years now, and I couldn't say no to Wren. But also, once he told me, about the story and all of that, I'm a big fan of Billie Holiday. I've done a show before about her music, and I just fell in love from the very first time I heard her music, songs like God Bless a Child. And so, she's one of my, I would say, musical heroes. He's actually promoted this event to this particular bar and trying to get her extra money. From what I understand, this is her third show of that night, and it was very typical of her sometimes after she's done a gig to go to these small spots with the pianist and do a gig and make some quick money. And I won't say under the table money, but I'll say that, these artists had to get it where they could, and I think she was going through a tough time, in her career towards the latter end there. And so, her pianist, Jimmy Powers, is looking out for her. He cares about her. He works for her, and he wants to make sure that she's taken care of. Jimmy Powers is kind of like her guardian angel at this point. He makes sure that she has everything she needs, that she's well dressed for her gigs, that musically, she's in good voice. He even when she's dealing with, I would say, even the legal stuff, he wants to protect her. He wants to protect Billie, and he loves her too. He's also her lover, and he admires her, but at the same time, he just makes sure that she has what she needs at all times, and he won't let her fall. He won't let her fall, and so it's as far as the story, you see them coming in, doing this engagement at Emerson's, and I don't want to give away too much, but as the story goes on, you begin to see even his heartfelt connection to her, and he sees her go, through different modes, through different moods. I want to say through as she expresses her life story, and her emotions, and as she pours out her heart, you can kind of see his care for her, and also his just even his hurt at some of the things that she's had to go through, and even as she is going through, let's say, some of the sadness he feels her pain. He definitely feels her pain, and he empathizes with her, and in some ways, it's breaking his heart to even see her as she is. I would say, I want to say descending. And even with all of that, she's very triumphant in her artistry, and that's one of the things I loved about Billie too. Is no matter what she was going through, she was always pouring out to audiences, and giving her best. And so, if she was going to do it, she was going to do it. And I'm sure, whether it was relationship she was going through, whatever trouble she may have been encountering at the time, racism or anything of that nature, she still found a way to be there for so many people through her music. And she loved her music, absolutely loved her music. And so even with Jimmy Powers, he makes sure that, hey, the show is still going on and everything is clicking and everything is right. All right, because like I said, he's not going to let her fall. So jazz musicians, and I do consider her a musician. She patterned her phrasing after horns. And she was very musical. Her phrasing was amazing. But one thing about jazz musicians, they were always in the moment. There was structure to their songs, but at the same time, there was so much feeling which they infused into their music, and so they could be feeling a certain way on any given night. And based on how they were feeling, maybe what they went through that afternoon or the day before, it would come out in their music. And that's the beauty of jazz. It's alive. It's not always the same way every time, and so you have that improvisational aspect to it. And even when you come to this play, you're sitting in on their creativity happening in real time. You will recognize some of the songs, but at the same time, we take on that spirit of jazz, jazz musicians, of which I am already, and I understand that, and I love that. And what it allows you to bring personality and different colors into the music as you feel them, and so and Billie Holiday was one of the best ever to do that. And Karole, she's an awesome musician. She's really taken this artist, Lady Day, and really personified her spirit. And Karole and I, we both love to work. And so, we got together on the music, and at the same time, she's taking experiences in her own life, Karole, and I'm sure, relating to Billie Holiday. And so it's a wonderful thing to see, and you see them even as she's telling her life story as Lady Day. You kind of see how the music comes in and almost echoes whatever she was just talking about. The music personifies the story. And even when Jimmy Powers does a little number midway through the show, same deal. He's telling the story. It's never just music and we're just performing. There's always a kind of biographical component that you hear in the music. So even the notes, and even with her voice, she's expressing, her journey. I don't know if Jimmy Powers is a real life person, but, he can embody many pianists of that time. Now, as far as for Billie Holiday, is there any pressure? I'll put it like this. It's a lot of respect and a lot of humility that you have to approach this kind of project with. Because she's such a legend and a transcendent talent, you have to do your due diligence. You have to, study the music. You have to get familiar with that era. And you have to, get into the spirit of it, as I'll say, because I know some people like to copy and all of that, but we didn't want to get into that. We wanted to more get into the actual feeling, their instinctive kind of traits. And so I don't see it as pressure. I personally see it as a joy to be able to explore this music and to live with it every day, and then to present it to audiences. And so, I'm a lover of music. I'm a great lover of jazz. And so to me, this was like an opportunity that I just could not pass up. And I relish it every day. I'm thankful for being a part of this, for Wren calling me and Karyn and those guys trusting me, with such a work. And I know as artists, as we enjoy the project, I know audiences will too. And so, that's pretty much it. I think when you're doing even this kind of music and even jazz, you can't approach it from a pressure kind of standpoint. Jazz musicians, especially of that era, they're very cool. They're very distinguished and royal in their nature. And so, if you're going to embody all of that, you got to, you have to have a certain vibe, right? And so that's my feeling on that. I want to say part of her spirit is freedom, no matter what the limitations were of even racial segregation and racism at that time, and some of the it's really unfair situations that were going on. Even with her personally, she was able to rise above it all as a queen, and she was able to shine. I mean, you're talking about someone who was, pretty much, she raised herself, and having to, work in, essentially, whorehouses, early on, and things that she's been through, as a child, for her to overcome those circumstances, to become what she became, I believe is one of the most triumphant stories ever. And even musically, what she was able to accomplish with no formal training, she was really gifted. And even through, abuse and things that she went through, she maintained her love for the music. And I believe her love for audiences, and even dealing with, maybe addiction and things of that nature, all of that, she still did not let it stop her from expressing herself. She was one of the co-writers of God Bless the Child. And sometimes we don't give her just due, as a songwriter, as a creator. And even she revolutionized phrasing for singers. And her tone was so distinct. It was so different. There's only one Lady Day. And, people can try to copy, but when she put her thing on it, as I'll say, it was unforgettable. And sometimes even being like either a little bit ahead or behind, she kind of relaxed on it more, on her phrasing. And her sense of timing was incredible. And so to me, I feel like she would compose on the spot. She would have the notes, but she would add her little, like a great jazz, saxophone player or trumpeter. And I think that, she will get, she needs to get more credit for that. And I want to, people know who she is, but I do believe there are so much going on today. So many things out there in the media and all of that. I am excited about audiences now, especially on the younger side. I'm a teacher. I teach, a lot of youth, being able to experience, this great musician, this great artist, and understanding her contribution to music, understanding her contribution even in business. I mean, she was one of the highest paid artists, at one time, doing so many big gigs, Carnegie Hall, and performing so many places. So she was to me, she was also a trailblazer, and she would not let anybody tell her what she could not do and what she wasn't going to do. And so I know you asked me earlier about her spirit, defiant too, very defiant. She was not going to take no. She wasn't going to just, walk away. She was going to find her way in, and even when they were trying to, restrict her, she still found a way to, to shine. Karole is amazing. I saw her a little bit as she was working, through her, with her voice and even, speaking voice and even singing. And from the first time I was rehearsing with her, you could tell she was already in that mode. She was already, getting it. And each day I've seen her just grow even more into the spirit of Billie Holiday. But one thing about Karole, she's her portrayal is very real. It's very real. So she's expressing the heart of Billie through her music. And we already know that Karole's voice is absolutely amazing. And I know she's done so many other projects. I saw her once in Porgy and Bess, and she was absolutely killing it. And so I know what she can do. But to work with her, she's very easy to work with. She makes it, if she has any kind of, I'll say this, she allows she allows me to, create and kind of go back and forth with her, between the piano and the voice, and it's an awesome synergy there. To me, we flow. It's a very easy thing. It was never like a tough kind of thing. It was very, very fluid, and even with her gift, it challenged me to make sure I was at the top of my game in terms of preparing. And at the same time, there is a conversation going on musically between Lady Day and her, pianist, and so we had to, get into that also and make sure that we're connected at all times. So I'm watching her a lot, and she's a great musician in her own right, and so if she goes here, if she goes left, I gotta go left. If she goes right, if she is feeling something and I hear it in her voice, and I try to match that energy with the piano, and sometimes I try to, almost like kind of offset things at certain times, colors against what she's doing. And so, I've had a lot of fun working with Karole. She has a great spirit, like I said, easy to work with, very fun. So we enjoy the whole process too, which I think makes the music, a lot easier. And that's pretty much it. Beautiful space. This is my first time here. Having the audience members at the little tables in front and the moat is very beautiful. It feels, when I'm down there, it feels like I'm actually in the bar. It feels good. The whole place is a very warm space. And Karyn has welcomed us here, and so I'm just thankful to be here. I know it's gonna be a lot of fun. We've been here, I guess, a few weeks now, so this is home for me right now, and excited. Love the set. And love working with the whole staff, lighting and sound, and stage manager Pat has been great, her and Lavana. And once again, Wren is like he just really prepared us very well. So by the time we're actually in the theater, we were ahead of the game. So we were able to actually kind of, sit in it, sit in the story and add little nuances. Even once we got here, add some things. And so I've had a great time working here. Hopefully, and we'll see, hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again, here and in some other places, yes. What do I want the audience to get out of this production? I want the audience to go on a journey with us and to listen, to laugh, to cry if they feel like it, to really come with an open mind, an open heart. Even if you already know the story of Lady Day, there are definitely going to be some elements in this show that are going to move you in a way that unlike before. There are going to be some elements that are going to touch you. There's a lot of history there. There's some things in her story that I've never heard before, but I learned in this particular play. And so I think our audience is going to historically, be educated, but also they're going to be moved in a very profound way, because even her humanity, just her reaction and how she was able to respond to her life's challenges, and even the challenges of that era is amazing to see. And I think audiences are going to leave here, I believe, having a new level of respect, understanding, and admiration for Lady Day. Like I said, she's a legend, and to me, if you're a lover of music, she's had such a wide-reaching influence on music, not just jazz. And so, like, if you have a favorite maybe R&B singer or pop singer, trust me, if you go back down the line, they were influenced either by someone who was influenced by Billie Holiday, or they were influenced directly by her. And so to me, it's a musical story, but it's also a great life story. And I think some of the things that were happening in her time, some of those things have come full circle. And so I think there's a lot to be gained from coming to a show like this. And on top of it all, it's extremely entertaining. And that's one thing I love about Billie too. And no matter what, she was always a great entertainer, and she hung with jazz cats, who were just the best entertainers around. They knew what they were doing, and they had a way of bringing style and flavor to the public to the point that if you saw them one time, you had to see them again, and they always left a mark on you. And so, to me, even in these, with all the music that's out here now, it's a great time for Southern California to come out and get familiarized with this era of jazz music.
I think ICT is a unique theater because, well, first of all, there's no space like this in the city, and even though we operated as a mid-size, someday we're going to grow into using all the seats, and it'll be a LORT contract, I'm sure. But no matter how far back you are, the way it's configured, you feel close to the action. There are only 5 rows in the orchestra, for example, so it feels intimate, even though it's much larger. During Lady Day's performance, we have a special opportunity for people who want to be up close and personal with the performers, because we have 4 tables with 2 seats at each table, so that's only 8 seats per performance to sit at the table just at the stage, and Billie Holiday will be coming around and talking with you personally. I wanted to include Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill in the season because, for several reasons. It's a beautiful play, and I love the historical context of what was going on, and I think it's important that we don't forget. And she was an amazing performer. And also, this is part of my community partnership with the African American community in Long Beach, which I've been doing since 2002. And we choose a show every year that we can bring our diverse community together. We raise money for college scholarships, and then we also find underwriters for bringing in students to the theater at reduced prices, of course. I saw rehearsal after the first week, because we always do that so the designers can see how you're using the space, and we can, it's usually the designer run, we call it, and they were so ready. and tonight's our first preview, and they're ready. I know God Bless the Child, which everyone's heard of, I think, but I'm not sure they realize that she wrote that song, and she wrote it for her mother. And she'll talk about that in the show too. I think it's ecstatic watching her perform and tell her stories, because no matter what she's been through, singing is breathing to her. And so that's what sustains her. That's what keeps her going. And I mean, there were some unfortunate things in her life that where she lost her cabaret card and couldn't perform. And so she was performing in small places like Emerson's Bar and Grill, where this takes place. And this is her final concert. I would like the audience to take away from this production a greater appreciation for Billie Holiday, who she is, and her music, of course. And for some, it's an introduction, depending on your generation, but also a look at the time period and the history and how we were at that time period in our nation with segregation, and how we treated, minorities, and I think we shouldn't forget, and I think we shouldn't forget so that we can do better and continue to do better. I think the Southern California community needs to come see Karole Foreman as Billie Holiday, because she will astound you. She's so comfortable in Billie's skin. She captures her musically, and just the feeling, her journey, her emotional journey, and the telling of her stories are so engaging.
What is unique about performing at the ICT Theater in Long Beach?
Well, first of all, ICT is in a terrific physical plant. And the notion that it's a size of a theater that it is, that there's a volume to it, but at the same time, the audience feels very, very close to the performance space. And I think that's a wonderful and exciting opportunity for this play and for actors and for an audience to see the play.
I think Jane really said it, what I'm thinking in terms of, even though what I love about this space is that even though it's a big space, there's so much intimacy to it. And anytime I've auditioned on that stage or come and seen a show there, even though it's big and beautiful, there's always, you feel right there with the action, which is really, really cool.
One of the things that's unique about working at ICT is that it's a fairly big space. A lot of the theaters that we work in up in Los Angeles are smaller spaces, although I've worked fairly recently in some huge spaces, so it's kind of a medium-sized thing. But we have to work to fill it and reach all the performers back there. It's a beautiful space. It's really quite lovely. I'm really looking forward. I can't wait to see what the set looks like. And once we get in there, we did a walkthrough of it at the beginning of this week, and got a sense of what the space is like. But Alex can tell you a little bit more about working in the space, because she's the only one among us who has before. So I'll let her do it.
One of the things I love about working at ICT is, yes, the space is beautiful, and the construction of it is lovely for the voice, and even just like the way your energy carries because of the way just the audience is set up. But one of the things I have found in working here twice is that everyone who's involved, I feel, is very invested in making sure that you, the actor, that you have what you need in order to do your best performance. And I think ultimately all theaters strive to do that, but I found that to be incredibly unique and specific to ICT, where I can say, you know, this is a silly example, but I really think I want to have glasses, and I want to have this kind of costume piece, and can I get like this specific kind of prop? And it's always, yes, whatever you need, we'll get that for you. And sometimes you get pushback with that, but I feel like they give a lot of trust. They put a lot of their trust into us as actors, which is nice, because then we get to do our job in the best way we can, but also we get to have more say in the creation of these characters, which is lovely.
Yeah. So, similar to most of us, I haven't performed here at ICT yet, but one thing that I thought was an amazing feature of the stage and the audience that we were able to walk through a couple of days ago is that it's set up in a thrust position, which is something that not a lot of Los Angeles theaters have. So as an audience member, I'm really excited to see a show here eventually, because you feel like you're right in the play. It wraps around the whole stage. So while we're on stage and while we're acting, you'll feel like you're in the house with us. Mm-hmm. And for our show specifically, we also have aspects that come out into the audience. It's almost interactive. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I'm super excited to see people see when they come and watch the show.